There's a moment in SpongeBob SquarePants where the show quietly breaks down its own universe. Not a plot hole, not cartoon logic. A single moment the writers never addressed. And once you notice it, the world of Bikini Bottom stops making sense. Stay with me, because what you're about to see changes everything. SpongeBob SquarePants takes place in Bikini Bottom, an underwater town at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. The show follows ocean logic: fish characters, jellyfish, coral reefs. Sandy Cheeks wears a diving helmet because she's a land mammal who needs air. That's the premise. That's the world they sold us. But here's the thing nobody talks about. From episode 1, the show broke its own rules. Fire burns underwater. Campfires, grills, explosions. Smoke rises like it's in the open air. Gravity works exactly like it does on land. No floating, no drifting. Characters walk. They don't swim. Doors open and close. Water doesn't rush in. And here's the most bizarre part. They're surrounded by water, but they can also pour water, drink water, and drown in water. You called it cartoon logic. We all did. But what if it wasn't logic at all? What if it was a confession? What I'm about to show you isn't a theory. It's evidence. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. The episode is called Pressure, and it's the single most reality-breaking episode in SpongeBob history. Here's the setup. Sandy and SpongeBob argue about whether sea creatures or land creatures are tougher. Sandy says land. SpongeBob defends the ocean. So they make a bet. Sandy will survive underwater without her suit, and SpongeBob, Patrick, Squidward, and Mr. Krabs will go onto land to prove they can survive up there. Sounds harmless, right? Except what happens next reveals something the show has been hiding since episode 1. Now let me show you the pattern the show has been concealing for decades. Because what happens in Pressure is just the most obvious example. When you go back and look at the full evidence across the entire series, the contradictions become impossible to ignore. Here's what we see in Bikini Bottom. Fire burns underwater. Smoke rises like it's in the open air. Gravity works exactly like land. Electricity flows normally. Weather exists, with rain falling, underwater. Characters can drown in water while living in water. The show is screaming that something is wrong. It just never says it out loud. But it gets even more bizarre. They drive boats underwater, boats with mufflers and exhaust fumes. In the SpongeBob SquarePants movie, live-action beach scenes show sea creatures surviving outside the water for comedic effect. In Spongehenge, SpongeBob is blown miles inland into a dry desert and somehow survives indefinitely. Every single one of these contradictions appears across multiple episodes. That's not cartoon logic. That's a confession. So, what does this mean? Here's where the illusion doesn't just crack. It completely shatters. A few minutes into Pressure, SpongeBob and the gang climb out of the ocean and walk onto a beach, and they're fine. No water helmets, no scuba gear, no gasping. They just exist on land, like it's nothing. SpongeBob talks, normally. His voice doesn't change.
Second rock up here.
Once you get your land legs, it's not so bad.
He doesn't suffocate. Patrick stands upright like a human. He doesn't collapse into a lifeless blob like a real starfish would. Squidward, an octopus, walks on 2 legs. No tentacles dragging. No dehydration. And Mr. Krabs? A crab? He's completely fine. Because real crabs can survive on land. But here's where it gets disturbing. They start interacting with seagulls. The seagulls don't freak out. They don't attack. They just talk to them.
Do you know Sandy Cheeks?
Like it's normal for a sponge and a starfish to be walking around on a beach. At one point, SpongeBob literally inflates like a balloon and then deflates like he's made of rubber, not organic tissue. And this next detail, this is where the theory stops being fun and starts becoming genuinely unsettling. They eventually panic and rush back into the water, but not because they're dying. Sandy just tells them they should be scared. So they run. And when they return to the ocean, nothing changes. No relief, no gasping for water. They just continue existing, like the ocean and the land are functionally identical. Because everything I've shown you so far is nothing compared to what this actually reveals. You see, Bikini Bottom is named after Bikini Atoll, a real place in the Pacific Ocean where the United States conducted nuclear tests in the 1940s and 50s. 23 nuclear bombs detonated underwater and in the air. The area was evacuated, irradiated, abandoned. What if Bikini Bottom isn't a natural ocean town? What if it's a post-nuclear mutation zone where the rules of biology, physics, and reality have been fundamentally warped? A place where sea creatures evolved to walk, talk, and breathe because they're no longer truly sea creatures. They're something else. Or maybe, and this is the truly chilling part, the ocean isn't an ocean at all. A dome built over a test site, a contained world where the characters believe they're underwater, but they're actually living in a simulated environment that mimics ocean aesthetics while operating on land mechanics. That's why they can survive in pressure, because they were never truly underwater to begin with. Bikini Bottom isn't underwater. It's fallout pretending to be an ocean. And if you think that sounds crazy, there's one character who proves it beyond any doubt. Sandy Cheeks. She's a land mammal, a squirrel. She wears a helmet to survive underwater. But in pressure, when she removes her helmet and tries to survive underwater, she can't. She starts drowning. She needs air. She's the only one who follows real biological rules, which means everyone else, SpongeBob, Patrick, Squidward, Mr. Krabs, they're not following biology. They're following something else. Sandy is the control group, the proof that Bikini Bottom isn't operating under normal physics. She's a land creature living in their world, and her existence proves one thing: the others were never meant to live underwater. And once you accept this theory, every character in SpongeBob starts to make horrifying sense. SpongeBob's body. He's a sponge, but he's not soft like a real sponge. He's firm, structured. He has bones. We've seen his skeleton in x-rays. Real sponges don't have bones. They don't have faces. They're filter feeders. SpongeBob isn't a sponge. He's something shaped like one. Patrick's intelligence. Starfish have no brain. Literally, no centralized nervous system. But Patrick does. He thinks. He has memories, emotions, fear. He's not a starfish. He's something rebuilt. Squidward's limbs. Octopuses have 8 limbs. Squidward has 6. The show even acknowledges this. In one episode, Squidward says, "I'm not an octopus. I'm a squid." But squids have 10 limbs, not 6. So what is he? Mr. Krabs. Real crabs are arthropods. They scuttle sideways. They don't walk upright on 2 legs and run a fast food empire. But Mr. Krabs does, because he's not operating under biological rules. He's operating under post-nuclear biology. And here's the most chilling detail of all. Where are the real ocean predators? No sharks hunting prey. No orcas. No barracudas tearing through schools of fish. In fact, fish are eaten in Bikini Bottom. At the Krusty Krab, fish eating fish. That's not an ecosystem. That's a closed loop. A controlled system, because Bikini Bottom was never natural. Every episode you watched as a kid was a lie. Not a cartoon lie, a structural lie. The characters aren't living in the ocean. They're living in a simulation of the ocean. Or worse, they're survivals of a nuclear disaster, reshaped beyond recognition, living in the ruins of a testing site that was never meant to sustain life. And the show? The bright colors, the goofy humor, the childlike innocence? It's a coping mechanism, a way for these characters to process the trauma of their existence. That's why Pressure is so important. It's the one episode where the illusion breaks, where the characters step outside their world and realize it doesn't matter. Land, sea, it's all the same, because they were never bound by the rules we thought they were.
Yeah, we're not chicken. We'll do it.
The ocean was always just window dressing, a set, a stage, a lie. So, was this intentional? Did Steven Hillenburg know what he was doing? Honestly, I think they knew. I think the show has always been winking at us, dropping hints, breaking its own rules, daring us to ask the question, wait, is any of this real? We all grew up thinking Bikini Bottom was just a silly underwater cartoon, but it was never underwater at all. It was always something else. Something stranger, darker, more fascinating. And once you see it, you can't go back. Because if Bikini Bottom was never underwater, then SpongeBob SquarePants might not be a cartoon about sea creatures at all. It might be a story about survivors. If this broke your brain the way it broke mine, hit that subscribe button. Drop a comment. Do you think Bikini Bottom is real? Or have we been living a lie this whole time? Thanks for watching. And remember, the ocean was never the point.